What if the very tools designed to save you time and scale your team could also cost you everything if deployed without direction? In this episode, we unpack the truth about AI agents, large language models, and what it actually takes to build systems that support, not sabotage, your team's goals. And we even we look at what it's an AI agent in real life and what it could do for you. So you don't just hear about implementation, you also hopefully get it. If you're leading strategy, implementation, automation, or just trying to future proof your team and your workflows, this episode will get you grounded real fast. This isn't about just some future predictions. It's about what's happening right now in organizations using AI with or without strategy. So stay tuned.
Welcome to the Events Demystified podcast, where we demystify the world of in-person, virtual, and hybrid events, AV production, and AI technology by sharing practical tips, tricks, and strategies to help your event succeed. This podcast is brought to you by Treefan Events, a woman-owned boutique event production agency that caters to event professionals, small business owners, and entrepreneurs. We specialize in AV and AI education, integration, automation, and implementation, all based on our Fit for Events framework, which focuses on futuristic AV production, innovative AI technology, thriving audiences, and empowering behind-the-scenes teams. And I'm your host, Anka Platon Treefan, with over 2 decades of hands-on experience in event production, event management, and now AI technologies and cybersecurity.
Welcome back, friends, to Events Demystified podcast, the show where AI isn't about hype. It's about how real people in real world, in real organizations, make smarter decisions through systems that actually work. I'm your host, Anka Platon Trifan, founder of Trifan Events Production and a fractional AI strategist helping event teams and creatives implement automation, augmentation, AI in a way that supports humans, not replaces them. Well, I've got a treat for you today. Today's guest is a force in the world of applied AI, someone I've been looking forward to learning from. Vlad Iliescu is the CTO of ZenAI.os, a Microsoft most valuable professional in AI and a recognized leader in large language model development. With over 2 decades of experience in software architecture, Vlad has spent the last 10 years specializing in machine learning and AI systems, particularly in healthcare, where innovation has to be both fast and safe. He's also a sci-fi fan in every sense and the founder of Romania's first AI ML conference series, NDR, which ran from 2018 to 2020. Without further ado, let's welcome our guest in. Welcome to the show, Vlad. How are you today?
Hi, Anka. I'm great, and I'm really happy to be here.
Well, I'm so excited to have you as well. And I want to kick our conversation off with a little bit of an icebreaker. As someone who thinks deeply about both code and culture, what's one sci-fi idea that's now creeping into real life development work?
There's so many of them, right? But one that I keep going back to is, so surely you know Arthur C. Clarke, right? Author of many sci-fi masterpieces. One of my favorite Arthur C. Clarke books is City and the Stars. Not a lot of people heard about that. But basically, one of the scenes is an AI that offers an interactive experience for a bunch of people, altering what they see, what they feel in real time based on their experiences. And I think we're not there yet. We will be there like soonish. We see this happening. But the cool part is that the book was written like 69 years ago.
Wow.
So he saw this. He's a brilliant thinker. I'm in awe of Arthur C. Clarke. And that's one thing I keep going
to. Well, I can tell you that there's definitely quite a few sci-fi movies that come to mind that I'm a big fan of sci-fi movies as well. And it's always like embedding real life into the future of what it could be. And like also a big fan of Black Mirror. Have you been watching that? Right. Some of those episodes can get really too real.
Yes. So I recently watched the latest season and then went back to the first one, skipping the first episode. But yeah, like the way we turn our experiences from the real to the digital realm, I think it's very influential. And I think Black Mirror really managed to capture this well. I think also like about 30 years ago, there was Star Trek The Next Generation, which also did that. Have you seen that? Do you remember the holodeck?
Yeah.
It's like, again, generative AI, right? Computer, build me this and synthesize this drink. So we had Black Mirror-like stories, but 30, 35 years ago, which was really cool. And for me, it sparked a lot of ideas.
Well, you've definitely started decades ago, and I was actually having a conversation with another data scientist, and he was talking about this paradigm that it had to be overcome because for many, many years, data scientists and computer scientists have been working at this idea of a generative AI. Machine learning was doing well, and it's been going well for quite a bit now, but having this next level, a paradigm shift, is what it took for us to get here. So it's almost like it was in the making many, many years, yet it took so long to get to this place, right? And now things are moving so fast that it's like we can't stop them. That one snowball is like now it's going without anyone able to really stop it. And some of us, the rest of us, were thinking, oh my gosh, how will I ever catch up? So what I want to hear as we get into this topic, what got you to the place where you're here, like the place that you're in right now? Were you always interested in computer science, machine learning, all this stuff? Or was there a transition or a moment when you realized this is where I need to be because this is the future?
I was always a fat kid. You know? So I found it way easier to talk to books and computers than with other people. So naturally leaned towards the computer side of things. So yeah, I've always been interested in software development. In high school, I would write games for fun, video games, which you know, that you can't find a lot of geekier activities, but now this is cool. But 30 years ago, it wasn't as cool. But I've gotten really interested in machine learning about 30 years ago, 10 years ago, the other 30, 10 years ago, when I decided I didn't want to write code, to write programs that do certain things. In my case, it was classifying expenses in my bank account. So something really mundane, but yeah, I'm a geek. And I turned towards machine learning and said, okay, I'm too lazy to write this myself. Okay, if this is looks like this expense has been performed in this shop, I don't know, it's closed, otherwise it's food, whatever. So I turned to machine learning and I was really fascinated by what it can do. And then it snowballed, let's say.
I love it. My brother, he's actually been into machine learning for about, I would say, a decade and a half too. He actually even started his own company about 10 years ago back in Germany. And I remember he was visiting once about 7 years ago, and they were in the process of deploying this, what it was at the time. They sold the company since then, but it was kind of Alexa like or type of video camera that you would install on your wall, and then it would be your home security system. So it would have camera, it would have machine learning patterns to learn who are the people that are supposed to be in this house versus who are the intruders, and also recognize pets and animals and flying bees if you had, I don't know, birds in the house for some reason. But I remember like he came to visit and they were in the process of deploying, and like every waking hours he was spending coding and teaching this algorithm how to recognize different patterns. And I remember in my mind back then, like I think I just had my daughter and I was kind of like taking a little bit of a time off from work. I was like, Jesus, I don't know if I want this life for myself. Like he was sleeping 2-3 hours a night. And then if we had a couple of hours to just go do some sightseeing, he was still even there with his laptop coding away. Do you feel like you had some moments like that in your machine learning journey where you just had to get something out, but it took like every ounce of everything you had?
I read a lot of Paul Graham's articles, Paul Graham from Y Combinator. And one thing he mentioned about startups is that it compresses about 15 years of your life in 2 or 3 or 5. So yeah, I get this feeling. So right, you're on a deadline with machine learning or anything software development, right? And you need to deliver. Now, what do? There's a price you need to pay. So if you want to achieve this, you either need to pay the price and not haggle about it, or it means you didn't want it enough. So I'm guessing your brother actually wanted this to succeed, so he did what he had to do to make this work. And I recognize that myself as well.
Yeah, he did. Eventually, they sold the company, the startup, which was profitable for him. And also, it was a happy moment for us because we got him back. And he's held at that point, as you said, because you're literally like just sitting in front of a computer all day long, eating what you can. Like literally, you're just feeding yourself whatever's on the side, questionable choices, obviously, and then your health suffers. It's like he put on a bunch of weight, and I'm like, this is not you. This is not okay like that. This will kill you if you keep going. So I'm glad he's got over that and into other adventures. But yeah, that was kind of like one of those moments where the reality of what a coder or developer is, a startup goes through, was right in front of me. And it's funny because I actually graduated in computer science, and writing code was the farthest thing from my mind. So once I got my degree, I was like, no way. Thank you very much. And then sure enough, here comes COVID, where we have to integrate a lot of platforms and a bunch of APIs. And there's a lot of integrations on the back end, especially when you're deploying high-level production solutions in the virtual world. And then we're talking about metaverse, and we're talking about Web 2.5, and then here comes AI, right? And it's like the irony of it all. I didn't want to do that, but what do I do now? It caught up with me right decades later. So I want to dive into our next topic, because this is something that people in our audience that are listening to the podcast, they're super, super interested to learn. They want to learn about actual applications of AI at work. What's real, what's noise? Because there's so much hype out there, and this hype is kind of like this cycle that evolves super fast, from like niche forums to every boardroom desk. There's like something or someone is either over promising on AI but never delivering to that point. So from your perspective, where are businesses actually seeing ROI when it comes to AI, and where are they getting stuck, especially in performative adoption?
Yeah, my favorite quote domain is, by the end of the year, 90% of all code will be written by AI, which is so far away from the truth that it hurts.
You're laughing inside when you hear that.
Yes, and you hear those from the people selling you the tools, so it helps to know who's saying what. But I think the biggest ROI is when you look at what you can automate easily that you couldn't before, right? So talking about what we mean by AI is a collection of techniques, right? It's some machine learning, some programming, some deep learning, newer stuff, but a collection of techniques, right? So some things work in some cases, other things don't. But basically, I would look at, okay, what can I automate easily with the current technologies? One thing that works really great, and that I think AI/generative AI is brilliant at, is prototyping. Right.
So what do you mean by that?
You have a project, whatever project you can think of. I was reading about Tim O'Reilly from O'Reilly Media, I think, had an anecdote in which a friend of his hired an intern, which in turn developed with generative AI a rather complex tool to analyze, I think, blood samples in a few weeks to a month, I believe. Really cool. Okay, developers are dead. Let's use generative AI. But no, the point was that this is a prototype, right? It proves that you can get from 0 to 1, but then from 1 to 100, you need the
actual expertise.
Exactly. Yeah. But I find it really useful for trying out a quick thing, maybe writing a small application. Again, developer at art, but that's what I would be looking at. Not necessarily building a chat. I see a lot of companies just yet another chatbot. And I think that's not a great approach. I think that's a great approach if you just want to check a checkbox. So yeah, we're doing AI. Great, chatbot. But if you want to improve the business processes, okay, let's see in which scenarios would we need like some sort of an intern, a really smart intern, not always reliable, but really smart, where would they help us? In those cases, okay, maybe put a small AI agent, maybe work with your IT department or buy a pre-made solution to try and automate a little bit and grow from there, right? Because especially for the people and for the companies who have close to zero experience with AI, there may either be no apparent value or they might think AI does everything. And of course, the answer is in between.
Right.
So then you would need to build up that experience muscle, right?
Yeah.
That understanding. And you can only do that by trying it out.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely a bit of what you just said where leaders are looking to invest right into AI just to look future ready. But then when you peel back the layers, you realize they don't really have a process, don't really have a team enablement or even change management to support that. That's what I kind of mean by when I say interest without infrastructure, because you have teams that are excited, but they're very unclear. One, what can AI do? What type of data do they need to support that, the data set? What exactly are the problems they're trying to solve? What is their workflow to even know where AI could help along the way, right? So there's a bit of like excitement mixed in with a very much clear processes and strategy as far as how do you move from this step 1 to step 10, where you could have a fully deployed solution that matches your budget, your workflows, supports your people. So there's a process behind him. There's resources to support that. Like all of this, it sounds like great on paper until you realize that, oh, wait, to make this happen, there's actually all these steps or all these resources, all this money we have to allocate to it. So I'm curious, as you've worked on the AI side and machine learning side for quite a bit, where exactly are the biggest wins, as you mentioned, and some of the bigger challenges that have to be overcome?
It's a good question. So again, from my development background, great win, one that I really like, is that for simple cases, you no longer have to write dedicated applications. Think of, okay, this might happen or that might happen, and type all the rules into an application, distributed, deliver it to your customer, stuff like that. Now you just have a large language model, right? An AI model, and
You
it
just
will
give
handle
it,
those cases. Yeah,
you
it
kind of just give it the like instructions. This is what I want, build, go to work. And then you just go and QC it basically.
Exactly. I have this great anecdote. We did that once, but we weren't working again in a chatbot scenario. We were automating business process, but the implementation, so developing this took a couple of days. But then the quality assurance, the testing, the evaluation, making sure it responds with a certain degree of accuracy and quality took 3 months. So, like
Yeah.
really easy to get the first version out of the door, and then it's a grind because it's
Yeah.
oftentimes, and this is not, yeah, I'm moving from the wins to the pitfalls. You don't always know. So when instructing an AI, you don't always know the exact effect your instructions will have, right? So as a program
Because it's
developer,
generative. Some of it is
yes, it's random.
instructions, and some of it will just be like, yeah, it's like the AI will decide if this is the right course of action, and then you have to redirect it. You might have to adjust it. And I think a lot of people get confused on this. It's like they think you just automate that's machine learning. If you're writing the code and step by step by step by step, that program will go and do its job, right? With generative AI, it's kind of like you don't know what you always get.
And you saw OpenAI being bitten by this, I think, was it last week? Where they had a system prompt update where the model where ChatGPT would agree with everything you said,
So
even though it was
annoying.
wrong.
I was
Yeah,
fighting with it so much last week. I'm like, stop just telling me the same
agree.
thing like what I just said. I don't want you to repeat like a parrot. I actually need some
Yeah.
thought leadership here, please.
Yeah, so that was part of the instructions. And if OpenAI, right, if they can mess this up, we can mess it up way worse. Right?
Yeah. But this is such a great point that you're making, because there's definitely like the desire to make things happen, right? And then especially I see the event industry is sitting on this huge amount of data. Over the years, you've had all these events, and then pre-event, during the event, post-event, you're collecting data. But then you're just sitting on it because you're like, it takes so much to just digest and tag and make sense of it. So for the longest time, everybody was just collecting the data and was just sitting somewhere on a shelf. Nobody was doing anything with it. Now we finally have the ability to look at it in a more analytical way and draw some conclusions, some decisions. You have Gen AI, you can easily sift through that data in no time and then be able to do something with it, some actionable steps from there. But even that, like if you look, say, the example of an agency that's been around operating for 20, 30 years, and over the years, they've worked with so many different clients, so many different accounts, so many different events, and they have all this information stored somewhere. It could be, I don't know, Drive, Box, Dropbox, SharePoint, whatever. And then for you to go in there and try to find something, like say you're just working with this client that you remember that you worked with like 10 years ago, and you want to make sure that you understand where they're coming from, or whatever you proposed at that one time is not repeating now. To find anything, it's like finding a needle in a haystack. Is there any AI solution that you can think, like a layer that you can apply to a system like that that's kind of disorganized? Or do you feel like that's just not possible? First, you have to organize what you got for AI to even be effective.
I think that's the next problem we're tackling, actually. I think Microsoft's Copilot is a good solution in this space.
But let's be honest,
actually,
Copilot has taken forever to get to this point. Like literally, they were like lagging behind years before they finally, now I feel like they're speeding up. They're finally coming with something useful.
But so not to GitHub Copilot. That's the problem with names. Because if you
Right, no,
one
not the
Copilot,
GitHub. We're talking about Copilot, Microsoft,
right? Yeah.
Enterprise, the chatbot. Now it's an app, like all the things.
The thing that worries me, let's say, about the entire problem space, let's say, is on the one hand that we as a society don't have some very clear standards for interoperating with AI agents, right? Because what I want to do is I want to tell an agent, okay, check out my mail, who did I talk to last year about this topic? And I want it to work. But at the same time, I don't want maybe a random instruction in one mail trigger my agent and have it start exfiltrating information or sending out my passwords to random strangers on the internet.
Right.
So I think that reliability problem of LLMs is not yet fully solved. I think they're on the gullible side. Yeah, anything anyone tells them, sure, boss. So that may be an issue. Also, with the latest advances, I was reading about the DMCP standard from Anthropic, makers of Claude.
Yeah.
It's a standard for allowing agents to connect to various, let's say,
tools,
information sources, you name them. But then if one of those tools is malicious, it can affect the other ones. And you have no way of checking that except by looking at the code. And if you're not a developer, what do you do? So it's an interesting problem, and personally one that I would like solved really fast, but yeah, I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah, I think it's definitely like there's a lot of tools out there and those are great. But then having the system, having the training, knowing where that is to be applied and how and why, I think that's where is what we're trying to solve here, and where I think most of the work will be put behind as we're trying to move safely into the future. And you mentioned AI agents. So let's get into it, like right now, right here. But before we do that, I want to give a bit of a like definition. So I'll give it my best and then you can jump in and give it your definition. So the way I see AI agents, they're like digital interns with initiative. So unlike other tools that wait for you to prompt them, like a ChatGPT, Gemini, an LLM for that matter, the agents are designed to take action on your behalf. And often they can do that across multiple steps and multiple tools that we just mentioned. And sometimes even without needing you to stay involved. So they could understand the goal. Let's just say, I want you to send a weekly digest of our top performing blog post to my newsletter subscribers. And then they decide how to do it. They might pull the data, they might summarize it, they might format it, and then they'll send it. And then act is where there's a trigger that will trigger that email. There's maybe a post to a messaging app like Slack or WhatsApp, whatever. So I get informed, and then some kind of an update. So I know that this has been deployed, right? So while a regular AI tool can give you the answer, an AI agent can actually give you some outcomes. Am I saying that properly?
I would say yes, because if we look at agents have agency, right? So they need to be able to take actions in whatever environment you put them in, most likely on your behalf. So that's a blessing and a curse, right?
Right.
It's on your behalf. So if they mess up, it's on your behalf. But they need to be able to take actions and they need to be able to make decisions. Now, in some cases, you might be prompted, okay, does this look okay? Continue, yes, no, maybe. But yeah, that's important. Actions and autonomy.
Yeah. And sometimes I'm thinking of the scenario where you have an AI agent deployed on your behalf to book your vacation, and then the AI agent just goes and like literally empties your bank account, spending it on, I don't know, some Mexico excursions that you didn't necessarily like sign up for or agree to. And then you having to call the bank and have this conversation with the bank teller saying, actually, it wasn't me who used it. It was my AI agent. I'm wondering what that future will look like. I'm like, will you actually have any type of negotiation power when that's going to come? They'll be like, I don't care. Why did you give your AI agent the credit card?
Yeah. Well, if the vacations advertise themselves as being the best in the world, then obviously the agent will pick the best in the world for you.
Right, exactly. And obviously there's going to have to be boundaries, right? Restrictions, and say, yes, I would like to go on a cruise to Mexico and maybe I would like to try an excursion, but it has to be within the construct of this much money on for this long. And you cannot just go wild and book me on every single excursion that's possible to do in Mexico, because that's not the goal here.
It's a matter of trust, right? So yeah, how much trust do you have in a non-deterministic automated process? And I think some people will have too much trust, some people too little trust, and we're about to converge in the following years.
Absolutely. So what are the different levels of complexity when we talk about AI agents?
I'd say it depends what you want to do with them and what you need to use them for. Again, I'm putting my developer hat. But I would look at, okay, you want to implement an agent, right? So the first step would be not to do it. The simplest way, step one in
Not to
building an
get into
agent,
trouble, don't do
for
it.
the love of God, don't do it. Think of something else.
Vlad, this is not the point of this podcast.
Sorry. That's exactly what an agent would say. No, but basically we need to understand the capabilities. And with generative AI, right, with AI models, you can do a lot before you give them autonomy, right? Before you send them out with your cash card, stars in their eyes, looking for the best vacation in the world, right? So talking about when you develop an agent, think about writing some manual rules, some rules that somebody from your team can inspect, can check that they're real, and can ensure that they're being followed, right? Because with an LLM, you can't always make sure it follows the rules. Those are merely suggestions, right? So I would start with this, and they'll slowly maybe build a business process, right? Maybe think about chatbots that handles support for restaurants, right? Somebody would say, okay, I want to make a dinner reservation. In that case, you might launch a small agent and it would extract the information, the name, whatever, phone number, how many people, and create a reservation. But in other cases, maybe they just ask information about the schedule or the menu. You might return a canned answer, right? So I would say try to keep the agency for the humans as much as possible. And of course, when that's not possible, if you're building a very generic application or if you want to be as flexible as possible, then I would say, okay, go ahead, give as much agency as you can to the LLMs. But then you need to really make sure you look at what it's thinking, what it's doing, and evaluate everything. Right?
So it's like a continuous training process, basically. You can just unleash it into the world and be like, okay, go and do your thing, because it's kind of like the way I'm thinking is, let's just say my son is ready to start driving, right? He goes through this process of learning how to drive, and then he gets his permit. And then I feel like between the first time he gets that permit until the next year or two, when he actually gets into the real driving experience, you have to constantly train, tutor, support, mentor, right? It's like the same way with this agent where you would want to make sure that they follow the rules, that they don't get into accidents, that they don't like drive crazy for some reason trying to impress their friends or things like that, right? So you have to have those rules, but they also have those moments of checkpoints where while you created the guidebook, you do make sure that it's followed. And while there might be some kind of like deviation to the plan, it's not such a wide deviation that it will impact your business in such a way that it becomes a liability.
It needs to have guardrails. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because otherwise mistakes happen.
Absolutely. So the way I'm thinking of the complexity of agents is kind of like you have your simple agents that can follow like a very fixed process that's designed. I don't know if that's kind of what we've been talking about right now, but then you can also have the next level, which could be like the smarter agents that can choose from multiple options. They can react to changes. They can loop task until something is done right. Like, for example, you're sending an email, but then it failed, and then you're actually trying again until the email is actually sent or something like that. And then you have those truly autonomous agents that, as you said, I don't think they're mainstream yet because there's too much liability. There's not a guidebook. There's just too much that's involved into getting there. But the building blocks sounds like they're being built as we speak to get there eventually.
Yeah, and it's a bit scary, the speed with which everything is moving, right? I mean, it feels like it's a bit hard to keep up, right? It's the Red Queen's race. Alice in Wonderland. You need to run as fast as you can just to keep up, and if you want to get ahead, you need to run twice as fast.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we're there.
Yeah. Okay, so let's do a quick bit of a screen share of something that you prepared for us. You ready for it?
Definitely.
Okay, first tell us what we're going to show, and let me make sure that I change views here.
So I was actually thinking about showing a quick agent. We discussed about this a bit earlier on, but I changed my mind.
Oh, okay. It's a surprise. So I don't know, dear audience, what you're going to get now.
No. But I was thinking, just to give you an example of how a developer sees an agent.
Okay.
Right? How you can really quickly build one. And just lately, I bought an aquarium with a fish. Well, actually, a fish and then an aquarium. And I did
usually that's how it goes, the process. You're like, okay, so I have the fish. Now what?
That was the situation in my family. So a fish was bought.
I will
been
not name through names.
That
several times over. I also have some stories, Vlad, in which we are not to be trusted with small animals of that nature, because one time we fried the fish, another time we boiled it, and a third time the cat got it. So I'm just saying we've learned our lessons, and right now I'm like, no fishes ever again in this household. Okay, tell me your story, because it sounds interesting. It sounds like you're going down that route right now.
I hope not. I hope we had another one 10 years ago and it died.
It didn't do well. I'm just saying sounds like you already have a reputation too. So I'm just saying, learn from my mistakes.
It wasn't me. I keep them alive, right? So after finding out the fish was bought in the family, I did a lot of research. Okay, what's the best aquarium? Man, right? We need a project. What's the best aquarium? What flora should it have? And it was brilliant. I used Gemini a lot for this, the deep research functionality.
Yeah. Yep.
So cool.
It sounds like you got yourself a really good looking aquarium with a filtration system and flora. And this fish is thriving. What's his name? It has to have a name.
It's Nemo. It's not the most original name. I did not ask an AI to name it. It's Nemo.
I love it. Okay, so what are we building here?
Well, a small agent that will tell me what are the best plants for my new betta fish.
Okay, all right, for Nemo. We're working to make Nemo happy right now. So let's start with the beginning. First off, tell us, as I'm making sure that everyone can see, what is this? Yes.
This is an IDE, right?
So it's a Visual
Studio Code.
Right.
It's a notebook in Visual Studio Code, in VS Code, which has some very light Python code.
Okay.
And I don't want to go a lot into this Python code, just so you understand what it does. I want us to look at what happens behind the scenes when I run this agent.
Yeah. I just want
right?
to give the audience a bit of a context. Like we're
Exactly.
using VS Code, obviously has some
So
Python involved, and then there is
exactly.
Copilot, GitHub Copilot that will help support some of this, right?
I'll show you in a moment GitHub Copilot. Exactly. So tooling Visual Studio Code, I'm using Python. That's a really good language for getting starting with development, but also for using and abusing large language models. So what I'm doing here is integrating with one of OpenAI's models, GPT-4 in this case, deployed in Microsoft's Azure cloud. Now I'm deploying it in Microsoft's Azure cloud rather than connecting directly to OpenAI, because on the hand, I really like it. It allows you to have, let's say, geographical boundaries for your data, right? So a lot of companies, especially in healthcare, where I'm currently involved, have some very strict requirements. Okay, this should not go outside, at least outside the European Union boundaries,
Right, like
right?
privacy compliance, GDPR, all of that.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. They need to be in the EU. So then, how do you do it? Because OpenAI is not in the EU,
right.
right? But Microsoft's Azure cloud allows you to deploy OpenAI models inside their cloud, which is in the EU. Specifically, it's in Sweden, using the model in Sweden. So that's really cool, and I'm connecting to it. Apart from that, I'm also using a very lightweight agents library from Hugging Face. Now, if you haven't heard about them, Hugging Face, it's a really cool company that works on democratizing artificial intelligence, and they are the home for a lot of very cool AI models for generating images, processing audio, you name it. And
Yeah. And very
also they
much
have a
open source. So like as a user,
very
you can use whatever others have built, and then you can actually interact with those models, ask for help if you need to, and go from there. I've played with a few of those myself. It was pretty cool, actually.
it's awesome. It's awesome. Really grateful they exist.
Yeah.
So what happens here? It's a bunch of code that probably nobody should be forced to understand. But the interesting part is over here.
Yeah.
I'm creating a new agent, and an agent by itself doesn't do that much except think, right? But thinking after a while, yeah, it's fun, but after a while, you need to spread the results of your thinking, right? So for this, I'm giving it two tools, right? One tool that allows it to search Google, and another one that allows it to visit a certain web page, right? Because I wanted to do my research, right? I want to build a new Gemini. And then, then I just give it an instruction. I have a new beta fish, and I'll run it. And that's all I need to do.
So
Full disclosure.
let me ask you something, right? Because someone will be watching this and be like, okay, so you've gone through all this effort to build this agent, to do this search, and why can't I just do this with Gemini's deep search function or ChatGPT's deep search function or Perplexity or whatever?
Absolutely. You totally can. And you should. You should not do what I'm doing.
Okay, so for
Don't
everyone
go
to
through this.
understand, this is for the purpose of kind of like getting behind the hood of what
Exactly. I
building an
want to
AI
show you
agent
the
looks
engine.
like. Like this is just a simple example. It doesn't mean that you have to use this example, but it could be a case study for something else that you might need in your workflow that's more complicated. But for the purpose of keeping this simple, that's what we're doing. We're taking care of Nemo.
Exactly. Just to give you a glimpse of what's going on under the hood.
So what we got here?
Right. So we'll see. This is what, my instruction, of course, and we'll see a series of steps. And the first step, it says, okay, let me just do a quick query, a quick web search for best plans for beta fish tank. And now you see a lot of text. These are the results it sees. And we don't need to read them, but it found a bunch of results, right? And then it goes, okay, this Buse plant aquascaping guides and tips. Okay, right. Let me go ahead and visit this and see what's going on in there. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. There's a Quora question as well. Let me visit this page and see what's going on in there. There's a Reddit thread. Let me read.
So does it have access to those pages, even though some of them, they are user content, right? So you have to have an account and you have to, like, how does it get there?
It will be
Okay,
blocked
so
on those.
only what's generally accessible without actually needing an account, a login.
Exactly. So, and of course, this isn't the best agent there can be. Again, for a deep research agent, use anything else than writing it yourself, right? But it told me the best plants are Anubias, Java Fern, Amazon Sword, Redroot floaters, and duckweed. And I already have Anubias, and I'm planning to buy some Java ferns.
So like if you're in this step, you would be, okay, so we need to QC this. We need to make sure that this agent has gotten us the right results. So you would probably maybe have another agent now built to come on top of this and QC that the results of this are appropriate and correct?
That's what I do. So when we're talking about developing an agent, I would basically log everything, keep the traces. Okay, what are the thoughts? Exactly each and every of these steps. And then maybe use another large language model to evaluate them. Okay, this was the user's request. This was the input data we got. Is this answer in line with this? Is it going the wrong way? Because once you get that, once you help the AI calibrate, then you will dramatically improve the results, and it just becomes a flywheel.
Right. Okay. So we got our answer, and we're going to QC that, obviously. What do we do next?
Well, next, I would just look at way better agent in the form of GitHub Copilot.
Okay.
Right. So GitHub Copilot, for those that don't know, is a, let's say, ChatGPT, but for your code base. Right, you can ask it a lot of questions about the code you have, about the code you want to write, about what you're writing. And recently, they also enabled agent mode. And what agent mode does is, well, I'd better show you. Improve my small agent notebook with, let me give it a very vague request that will guarantee the results being bad with whatever you see fit.
This is when you have no guardrails and the agent is kind of like, it's like, okay, Godspeed, right. See what happens.
Yes, but what does it happen? So you can now see each and every thought. It starts checking my files, starts reading them, and if you think about it, it's the same pattern as in my research agent, right?
Only a little bit nicer looking, because now
way nicer. This is ugly. Yeah, exactly. This is beautiful.
Yes.
Right? But it's the same thing behind the scenes, right? This has a better user interface, way better. And of course, it's more thoughtful and all that. But in essence, what did we build and what do we have here? These are agents that are given a rather vague task, let's say, in both cases. But then they start making decisions. They start looking at the data they have, looking at the tools they have available, right? Because GitHub Copilot can edit my files, right? And with all that it entails, and helping you to get to your goals or to what they perceive to be your goals. Absolutely. And in some cases it works. In some cases it doesn't work. Most likely here, when I ran this before, it implemented a bunch of improvements, and some of them were really good and some of them were bad, like
not
bad.
So good.
Not brilliant, I would not call them. But you see, so it already started. Okay, this is my code, and it starts changing the green.
So basically, it's updating it as it goes.
Yeah. So it's fascinating to see. And in some cases, if I try to run this again, it will fail. But you do get some nice ideas. You do get some great ideas in some cases, and it's nice. I always see this as let's say, a junior developer, an intern that's really eager, really fast, but you need to constantly check.
Right.
And that's what I wanted to show you.
Awesome. I love it. So really quick on this, because I wanted to highlight something that I felt like it's important to, let's go back to ourselves here. It's important to highlight. So you mentioned how you're operating in the Azure cloud because that's a safer way to contain an agent. Now, I was like going through my own research of building my own AI agents, and there's so much information out there, but the good news is it's there. So if you want to learn, you definitely have options. But a lot of the information that I was getting to also were giving this warning that sometimes if you're not aware, and if you're like a beginner into building AI agents and you build it into your own system, like let's just say you build it locally, if you don't know what you're coding, and if you're not able to read the code as a developer would, you could basically set your system on fire. Like their agent could go crazy in your system and delete system files and things that should not be ever touched because they're there for a reason. Do you feel like that warning is real? And what are some ways to overcome or stay away from it, aside from always building maybe in the cloud, or maybe is that even fast enough, or how does that work?
This is a really good point. So, and my experience, I avoid running random projects off of GitHub. So, because it's exactly this, you have a project written by some people you don't know, and you don't know how well they tested it. Getting access to your computer, let's say, especially with computer use AI.
Yeah.
Right. And you get some entity that doesn't even think, right, with your permissions, that can click and do stuff and spend money and maybe delete files that you don't want deleted. And it doesn't sound safe to me. I encountered people who would say like, okay, nothing bad happened to me. Okay, but I understand that, but it doesn't mean it won't, right?
Right. Yeah.
I haven't hit my hand with a hammer lately, but it doesn't mean I won't.
Yeah.
So I would take a good look at, when trying out a new agent, a new solution, at the security, at what permissions it needs. And I would keep in mind that if the AI follows my commands, it might also follow other people's commands, right? Because this is an issue with MCP tools, for example, right? The integration with file system and databases. If somebody puts a malicious tool in your toolchain and convinces you to download it, then that tool could access the results of the other tools, right? The ones that read your email, that have your credit cards and so on. So I would pay attention. So in my case, I don't use a lot of agents. Maybe I'm old school, but stick to GitHub Copilot and some deep research agents, which I find invaluable, but I would not hand over my computer to an AI right now.
So if you were to build a safe agent, what are some best practices then for that?
I would look at minimizing the permissions they need. So in our case, when building medical agents for Zen AI OS, we look at helping the doctors achieve their goals, right? But this doesn't mean replacing the doctors. This doesn't mean taking actions on behalf of the doctors, right? So we look at building agents that automate things. And in this automation, right, so maybe generate documents that you need for each patient. But even when doing this, we don't delegate everything to the AI, right? We try to use the AI for the things it's good at, right? Extracting information from text, formatting, it's brilliant. But then when, especially when talking about healthcare, you need your application to be as reliable as possible. And at the moment, that means a mix of human intelligence and artificial intelligence, let's say.
So that's kind of like what you call a responsible use of AI, meaning that the tools have accountability baked in, and it's not just auditing logs, it's actually decision visibility, overriding permissions, human entry points, where that applies, especially in those mission critical industries like healthcare. So for someone that's thinking to take this AI agent, because it is the talk of town, from concept to capability and get into the heart of it, but then again, doing it in a safe environment, then is there a specific modality or a specific process or a specific tool out there that would support someone if they're not necessarily a developer, but they still want to get into it and do it in a safe manner?
I think the first step would be just finding a niche to scratch, right? Because the most interesting side projects I've had
Is the why.
were,
like, why do you need it?
It needs to help me. I'm very egotistical, right? What's in it for me? And once you have that, there's so many options. I think it's a bit overwhelming how many options there are. What I would pay attention to would be, on the one hand, okay, what's the privacy policy of each of those tools? Be it Anthropic's Claude, OpenAI, DeepSeek, right? DeepSeek doesn't have a great privacy policy as far as I know. And specifically for this, you need to understand, okay, where are my questions being sent to? Who can read my data? Will they train their models on this? Is this an information leak? Stuff like that. So that's maybe a question you would need to ask yourself. And that's one reason for why I would recommend going to established solutions or hosting yourself. But again, for somebody just getting started with AI, running something locally might not yield the best performance, right? Because on the one hand, the models that you can run locally are quite small a lot of times, or maybe you have a really good gaming machine, but in that case, it requires some level of, let's say, development experience. So I would stick to hosted solutions by established parties. And I would look at saying, okay, what can I automate? Where would this help me? I found a lot of great uses from just summarizing meetings. Okay, I have this meeting recording. Let me get a transcript out using one of OpenAI's models, and then let me ask an AI who said what are the main points. So then even if you haven't attended a meeting, you get the gist of it. And it's like having someone narrate it to you. And just today I was reading about Satya Nadella's use of Copilot. I don't use Copilot myself, but that's a cool use case. I read he didn't necessarily listen to podcasts, but he would transcribe them and have chats with an AI in the car while commuting
about that specific topic.
About the podcast.
Oh, very cool.
Which is a nice use case. I haven't thought of that. Yeah. I can ask questions.
Yeah, I tend to do that. Like, for example, I would have this long YouTube episode of something, or maybe it's a workshop, and I don't have time to actually watch it in real time. So I download the transcript. And then when I'm on the go, on the treadmill, doing my thing, I would ask questions about that because I already preloaded the transcript into ChatGPT. And then I can go back and ask, okay, so tell me more about this. Like, what exactly are the important key takeaways that I need to know? And then just having this conversation, it's actually a fantastic learning tool. And I think this is where the power of AI has helped me the most. Like, I don't know if I told you the story. I have never coded in Python, but a year and a half ago, I needed to figure out how I can automate the podcasting process. So I don't have to spend all this time taking the intake form and then taking the information from the guest and then creating some kind of an outline and then sending it back to the guest and all those little steps that take time. Like, sure, it doesn't take a whole lot of time, but if every hour is spent on that, it adds up, right? So that's when I was like starting like thinking, okay, if I build a custom GPT that could do this automatically for me, and all it does is just spits out everything in no time, in literally 1 or 2 minutes, less than that, I'm wondering what would that take? But obviously what it took is actually having some code behind it. And what do you use to build some code? Nowadays it's not C++, which is what I did like 20 something years ago. So I'm like, oh, I got to learn Python. Oh, I've never touched it. So here I go on this mission with ChatGPT at my side to learn Python. And sure enough, by 2.5, 3 Saturdays of like grinding it and like some swearing words thrown in there just for fun, we got the solution. I also actually got a really good idea of what that is, the process of learning Python. And then I wouldn't say I'm an expert in Python, but it's good enough to be able to build those solutions for my team, for myself, and be able to say, hey, if someone that has never touched Python before can do this in like literally 2 days time, if you allocated a full day, what else can you learn? Like, if I wanted to fly to Mars and I had enough time to dedicate to that, I'm pretty sure you could learn anything you put your mind to, because now the information, not only that is readily available, but you have the tools that can take you step by step. And that was the secret for me, because I would ask ChatGPT to review my code. And this was before where you had the agent mode, and then you even had ChatGPT embedded into VS Code and all of that, right? Like, I literally had to snap pictures of what I was doing and then be able to converse. But then ChatGPT would just want to go like 7 steps ahead. And I'm like, wait. I'm still working on this part of the code. It's like, do not go like 100 steps ahead, because like I need to go step by step, right? So like even training ChatGPT in that mind process that we're taking it step by step to learn this, it was a learning experience as well. So you're training AI and AI is training you. I feel like this is where we're at. Like, it's this kind of like symbiotic relationship that now we're having with this AI systems. And because we started on Sci-Fi, I wanted to touch on Battlestar Galactica. Have you watched that?
I wanted to, but then life happened. So
Well,
no.
I'll tell you, it's one of my most favorite sci-fis. It's greedy, is kind of like this post 9/11 reimagining of the 1978 sci-fi world. But what's even cool with that, because this season I think ran from 2004 to 2009, and it's actually high praise to be one of the best science fiction series ever made, and for good reason. It was actually really, really good because it's not just about robots and spaceships. It's about survival and identity and politics, faith, AI, and what it means to actually be human. But it also can be dark in kind of like the best ways. But then Caprica, it was the prequel, and that was supposed to be set about 60 years before the fall of those 12 colonies. And what was interesting about Caprica is that they introduced a lot of those early ideas, as you mentioned in the beginning, about AI agents, uploaded consciousness, virtual identity. And those ideas are like years before our mainstream is kind of catching up on. Anyway, super worth watching. I remember actually when I was watching this, it was before I had my son, and Apollo, he's actually named after one of the characters from Battlestar Galactica, and then also from the Greek god, but that's like the second side of the story. But it was very interesting because it was exploring those AI narratives and their cultural roots that now we're having those conversations around like modern AI fears and ethics. And so much of it was like unpacked like during those episodes. It was very, very cool. So as we come up to a wrap up here, because I want to tie it into something practical. Let's just say we have a business leader or leader that is very curious about AI and AI agents, implementation, automation, all those things, but they're stuck. What's the best way for them to start implementing AI without getting totally overwhelmed? And do not put your developer hat on.
Okay, seeing what your capabilities are, right, in the company. Do you have an IT department? Are you the IT department, right? How big, how small is it? And then try and understand, okay, if you want to automate something using AI, what can you do? Yeah, can you build something? Because if not, then it doesn't make sense. You need to buy a pre-made solution, right? But I would just look at, okay, what do you want to use AI for in the company? Is it to in an agentic mode, right? Do you want to have an impact on the outside world? Yeah, you want to send emails or stuff like that, build more complex automations, or you just want to have something that you can put on your knowledge base, right? All the documentation, all invoices, whatever, and get insights from that, right? And based on this, you're free to pick the way forward. But I see some very different paths between just building a solution, having an IT department that builds a solution, and just implementing some pre-made stuff on top of it. Because I think right now, most solutions in like all domains are starting to implement AI, and a lot of them aren't chatbots, thankfully. So there are a lot of interesting ideas being tossed around, including, I think I saw Honeycomb, which is an analytics platform, allowing you to write queries, right? Talking to a chatbot and asking it, okay, how is my web application working? Is it slow? Is it fast? What do you notice? Do you notice any weird stuff? And it would translate your very vague requests into selects in the database, or it would extract from whatever dark place you stored your logs to those insights and bubble them back to you. So I think first thing, what do you want to automate? And then decide how.
Right. So I thought I heard you say is whenever you're ready to start on this journey, don't just build right away. You really want to run some kind of a diagnosis. What's the pain point that's costing you time or margin? What's repetitive? What's inconsistent? And then build from there, because in my opinion, AI shouldn't just be this disruptive thing that you throw at your data set. It should be clarifying. Now, one more question. What's one myth that you wish more executives or leaders understood before greenlighting any AI projects?
Yes, I struggled to explain this to a lot of leaders I work with, including in my company. But it's basically that AI gets you there 90%, gets you 90% of the road just AI. And then the other 90% you need to do yourself, right? So, and it's sometimes I believe I'm funny, but basically what I mean is that it's easy to believe that implementing an AI solution, you almost got it. You just have 10% more and it's done. Whereas in fact, the only thing you built is a prototype, right? In most cases, right? And now that you have a prototype is not 90% of a solution. Those who build a solution know that, right? It's about 10%. So you need to build 90% more of the solution.
So what you're saying is that in our instant gratification world, there is no such thing as AI equal instant results and instant solutions. You still
We
have
have
to
a
put
way
in the
with
work.
words. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. It's tough. It's
so
tough.
hard. What are we talking about here? AI was supposed to solve all our problems and be this magical unicorn that we applied to everything that we don't want to do anymore. What are you saying, Vlad?
I'm just the messenger.
No, not going to kill the messenger. All right. Well, Vlad, this has definitely been such a wonderful and very interesting conversation. So before we wrap up, what's one belief or mindset that you think every team needs to adopt before they build anything with AI? This is the mindset, right? We talked about instant gratification. No, that's not happening. That's one myth. What's the mindset? What do we need the mindset to be?
So I would not trust but verify. I think it's the mantra when doing AI, right? So we trust that our solution is good, but at the same time, we need to log everything, we need to evaluate everything, and we need, in case something miraculously doesn't work, we need to understand why it doesn't work and complete the feedback loop, right? Put it back, fix it, and ship a new version of the project, and then do it all again.
Reiteration. Right there, many times over, X 100, whatever how many times it takes, right?
Polish.
I love it. Vlad, where can our audience connect with you? And do tell us more a bit about the workshops and webinars that you put on. Are they weekly, monthly? I think that's how I came across actually your profile. Yeah. I was like, wait a second. He's a Romanian that I might want to have on the podcast. And funny enough, he lives in Iași, still lives in Iași, right? Which is literally a stone throw away from where I grew up in Cluj. So even though it's been definitely 2 centuries, right? 2 decades since I was there, too many. It's still very good to see that Romania is thriving, and they've always thrived, especially in the technology world, leading the way in so many different ways. And there's so many bright minds coming out of there. So thank you, Vlad. You're one of those. And I am so grateful that we got to have this conversation.
I'm very glad as well. Just to avoid putting a bunch of links, I would say just go to vladiliescu.net and probably
spell
we can
it
add that
for our friends that might just be listening in versus watching.
It's VLADILIESCU. You see, I learned my spelling. .net. So then you'll have links about my Blue Sky profile, about my Substack, about the LinkedIn, and all the events I'm organizing.
And you do the series of events with Microsoft, right? They're learning coding and AI agents. And how does one get to be part of those?
To be part, well, in my case, sheer luck and a lot of hard work. So
no, I mean,
I'm
like,
not sure
if you
about
want if you want to be part of like watching those or learning from those, do you sign up on Microsoft website, or where does it?
It depends on the show, but I would say a lot. We do a lot of, let's say, boot camps in collaboration with Global AI Bootcamp, which is organized by Microsoft, but not necessarily not just Microsoft, also Microsoft MVPs. So on Global AI Bootcamp, there are a lot of events like spread across the world. So we have some in Romania, but there's also in the Netherlands, a lot in the US. And if you want to see some good local events, that would be the place to go. And other than that, of course, I'm also organizing the generative AI community in Romania. It's Gen AI Club, so GenAI Club, .ro, but that's more focused, let's say, to our Romanian community. But every now and then we have international events as well.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Vlad, for sharing your expertise with us today. And if this episode gave you clarity or even just, I don't know, gut check, it might be time to go from inspiration to infrastructure. I hope that it helps you to rethink how you approach AI. So please share this episode with your professional network if you gained any new tips and knowledge. Don't just keep it for yourself. Subscribe to the podcast for future value-added episodes like this one. And share this with someone you know that is stuck in the AI, but what now phase. And until next time, well, stay curious, stay strategic, and always keep it human. Bye, Vlad.
Bye, Anka. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Events Demystified podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with other professionals like yourself. If you're interested in learning more about TreeFan events, including our future AI education talks and workshops, or to see how we can support your next event, book a free 20-minute consultation through the link in the episode notes. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on YouTube, Spotify, and social media for updates on future episodes, industry insights, AI news and tips, and more. And if you have any topics you'd like us to cover, feel free to reach out.